Molly, thank you so much for joining us here at Super Return. Yours is a fascinating story, and the crowd here at Super Return, I guess, are dealing in relationships and trust, and that's what you dealt in too. So what do you think you can impart to this audience?
I think in terms of relationships, and I can't stress how important that was for my business, and I saw that right away. And I think that there's kind of two ways to conduct yourself. There's the way of how am I making it look, and then there's a way of who am I really, right? Do I care? And at the end of the day, if I am just with myself, have I proceeded with integrity? And I think when you're a person that cares truly about other people, about the world, and about your relationships, it ends up becoming very evident. And I think doing it the other way, where you're just making it look like you do, also becomes evident. So I think the way to really solidify good relationships is to be honest, is to have integrity, is to be accountable, is at the end of the day to look at yourself and ask yourself, have I been this person?
Yours is an extraordinary story. Do you look back and say, how on earth did I take that path? It's an unusual one to have trodden, isn't it?
Yes, I do. And I mean, you know, even watching the movie, and it wasn't even that long ago, you know, I was pleading guilty in 2014. But yeah, it's inconceivable to me now.
And what led you to that path? Because you were on quite a sort of normal trajectory, if you like. Okay, you were an exceptional athlete, you were very bright, but you had that kind of conventional background, if you like.
I think it was a complete accident. But I do think that, you know, I talk about growing up in this very high-achieving family, and both of my brothers were prodigies. And I sat at that dinner table for years and felt a little bit less than. And so I think I went out into the world and didn't fix that. I went out into the world and I was looking for a reason to matter, and you know, and looking for adventure and looking for significance. And when that first day at that poker game, I saw this massive opportunity to get in front of a network of, you know, really important people. And you know, I definitely wrote it out too long, but I think the initial idea was right.
You were hugely successful. Tell me about that. What was that like for a young woman being in that position where you saw this opportunity and you seized it?
It was really empowering. I went up against a lot of formidable enemies and a lot of very powerful people, and you know, against this sort of handicap of not knowing anything about the industry, not knowing anything about running a business, math not particularly being my strong suit, and I figured it out, and that would change the trajectory of my life forever. And that's why I think it's such a great benefit to get thrown in the deep end sometimes, because we can figure it out. And I particularly think that women, if they can lean into sort of what their fresh perspective is, because for me, you know, I was always concerned about everyone in the room and what they thought, right? And if that can be a huge asset or a liability. If you look at it as, I have this innate vision to see what people want, that's an asset. But I think we have to be able to disconnect from the personalization of it.
I think what's extraordinary about your story is that there is so much fear of failure in the world, and especially amongst high-performing people, but you were willing to take that risk, and you said, well, what can be the worst thing that can happen? And I guess, you know, further down the line, pretty tough stuff did happen, but that's quite an unusual outlook to have.
I'm just a professional at failing.
Or trying new things.
Trying new things. Yeah, I think from a young age, you know, I talk about growing up, again, with this high-achieving family and just desperately wanting a significant life, and knowing on some level that I didn't have all this natural talent, and that I was just going to have to keep going and keep getting up and keep, you know, applying force until I could break down walls. And, you know, you walk through that one time and you're like, wow, this works.
You talked there about breaking down walls and achieving, but also obviously we've got to talk about how it led to some very challenging times for you. How on earth did you survive that? Because you are incredibly resilient now, and you've proved to have this incredible core to you in terms of integrity. Tell me about that, where that comes from, and what drove that in you.
Well, I think it all comes from kind of the same place of making a choice at a very young age that I refuse to accept failure. Now, the day in and day out of that can be very difficult. Something that was very critical for me when the world fell on top of me was to look at it and own my part in it. This was me. I made these choices. I blew my own life up, you know? This wasn't the hand of injustice. This was my own self. And in owning that and taking responsibility for that, it's initially a hard pill to swallow, but it's empowering. You're not a victim, you know?
It is extraordinary, and as you say, they were your choices, but you were also given the choice to change things for the better for yourself by, you know, revealing the names of the people you played with, and you chose not to do that. Tell me about that decision, how hard that was, and how those people then reacted to you.
Yeah, so in my case, the feds really wanted me to be an informant, and they offered me a lot of value, you know, immunity, money, my money back and everything. And what I ultimately arrived at was that because these were my choices, I needed to stand for the consequences of them, and to turn around and destroy other people's lives who have kids, who have wives, who have, you know, you don't know the ripple effect. I couldn't figure out how to justify that. And I also think that, you know, in running these games and in all those years, I started to realize that this gambling empire was so much about addiction. And I saw other people's lives coming undone, and I got to a point where I didn't really like myself, and I didn't really feel like I was doing the right thing. And I think I knew that if I wanted redemption, if I wanted a second chance, then I needed to return to that place of like complete, fearless integrity.
Do you acknowledge how strong you are? Because you talk there about, I'm really good at failure, you're very self-deprecating, but you've pulled yourself out of this, you've written a book, you've you know, been featured a massive movie that's been hugely successful, and now you're here talking to people who are enthralled by you and want to have selfies with you. How extraordinary is that for you, and that journey?
Oh, you know, it's incredible, because I think the first time around, you know, the first couple times you find success, maybe you're not in as much gratitude. I am in so much gratitude every single day, and you know, I have the lessons now. So I know that my soul's not for sale this time. So like when I have opportunities, I run them through that calculus of, does this move the needle forward for things that I care about, you know? And it's really this liberating experience to have been through all this, to have been up, been down, been rich, been poor, you know, all these things, and to know that you're gonna be okay, you know? And that's something that I'm really getting a lot of value out of in speaking, because I get to impart this message, like, it's okay to fail, you know, it's okay if you fail, it's okay if it's all your fault. You've got to own it, you've got to, but there's redemption for you, you know?
There was a very large group of women who were very keen to talk to you after you spoke today, and I think one thing I'd like to ask you about is women and leadership, and how you feel about being a role model to women now, because this is an industry that's you know, trying to work hard to recruit more women into it and be better in terms of diversity. What would you say to women about being a leader and being strong and standing up in what's historically been a man's world? Can't get much more male than the poker world.
That's for sure, yeah. First of all, there are very few things I care about more than empowering women. It is just so near and dear to my heart. I think women are so massively qualified to be in leadership positions. I think, you know, and I think a big part of it is leaning in to the fresh perspective that we take, or that we bring to you know, a male-dominated industry, not trying to emulate our male counterparts, but realizing what we bring to it. We understand relationships. We understand, you know, big picture thinking and thinking about things, and we understand, you know, making people, we're more understanding, we're more compassionate. And I think bringing these attributes to these different industries is a huge asset for us. And, you know, I think we're starting to definitely see a shift. And it's our time to capitalize on it. It's our time to take bigger risks and to be able to kind of detach from what's everyone going to think, you know? That's something that I had to work on in myself, and a lot of women I talk to, you know, struggle with. And, you know, I think it's really upon us right now to take that leap and to stay true to compassion and integrity, because in that way we change the world. We change business, we change the world.
You talked about the fact you're writing another book, despite the fact you said you wouldn't. But what is the next chapter for Molly Bloom?
So, you know, I was at rock bottom in every possible way you can think. I was a drug addict, a convicted felon, millions of dollars in debt, reputation destroyed, really was not looking good. And, you know, not only was I able to build my career back, I was able to figure out how to have inner peace, you know, and how to liberate my mind from this sort of suffering that was going on and everything. And so I feel really compelled to talk about that journey, really compelled. And so that's the second book. And, you know, that's in the vein of what I care about right now.
If there's a little girl who is watching this or is inspired by your story, what would you say to them about the choices you make and who you need to stay true to in life?
I wish as a little girl that I would have embarked sooner on a journey to get to know myself. And that's this strange phrase that is, you know, sometimes thrown around, but I think a great tool for that is meditation, because we have to sit through all of the inner dialogue, the doubt, the critical voice inside, the fear, all that stuff. And over time, when we sit through it in meditation, we're able to detach from it. And it's basically like the question of, what would you do if you weren't afraid, right? And it helps to start to address that. So I think young girls should be meditating. I really do. And you know, embarking on a path to get to know themselves and get solid with themselves.
To really bolster mental health.
Yes.
And that's a big topic in a lot of countries, particularly in the UK. We're talking about it a lot at the moment in terms of, you know, social media and the pressures on young children and teenagers in that sense. So having that self-examination and being able to have perspective.
Right. And there's real science behind meditation too. It's not just this very thing. You know, you can look at brain scans, someone before they meditated and someone after, and the area of their brain that's responsible for rational thinking is bolstered, and the area of the brain that lives in fight or flight, fear response becomes less active. You know, there's real science behind this, and I also have this experiential knowledge. You know, meditation changed my life.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It is an extraordinary one, and we really appreciate hearing your insights. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here, yeah. Thanks.